At 3:17 a.m., Emma Langley stares at her bathroom mirror. Her hands are covered in blood. A child's toy lies at her feet, cracked and stained. She doesn't remember how it got there. Behind her, the bathtub overflows, but it's not water. Pouring out. It's milk, ice cold, staining the tiles like paint. Emma blinks and suddenly she's alone. No blood, no toy, just silence. But when she turns around, there's something scratched into the wall behind her in a child's handwriting. "You forgot again." The first time Emma noticed the shaking, she blamed it on too much caffeine. She stood in the kitchen of her two-bedroom house in suburban Pennsylvania, staring at the trembling spoon in her coffee cup. Her hand twitched, just slightly, enough to stir the liquid with a soft, rhythmic clink. She put the cup down and pressed her palms flat against the granite counter, breathing deep. The sun hadn't risen yet, but she was already dressed. Hair tied back, mascara done, trying to keep a routine, trying to be normal. That was the thing about normal. It's only ever a costume. She hadn't worked in 6 months, hadn't driven in 4. The court-appointed therapist called it dissociative fugue, said the trauma was too severe. Gaps in memory, wandering, occasionally waking up in unfamiliar places with no recollection of how she got there. Emma nodded through every appointment, but didn't really believe any of it, until the morning she woke up in the middle of a park 6 miles from home, barefoot, clutching a stuffed giraffe. That giraffe belonged to her son, her dead son. It had been 2 years since the accident. They said it was a seizure behind the wheel. A freak neurological event. One moment she was driving home from the grocery store. The next, she woke up in the hospital. Sam, her 4-year-old, had died on impact. The car had flipped into a ravine. The autopsy showed no prior history of epilepsy or neurological disorder, just bad luck. But Emma never remembered the crash, never remembered getting into the car. And in the months since, strange things had started happening. Lights left on in rooms she hadn't entered. Child-sized footprints in the hallway dust. A lullaby playing softly from the attic, though no one had ever gone up there. She chalked it up to grief, to stress. Her therapist suggested a mild psychosis, an expression of unresolved guilt. Nothing to be afraid of. But this morning, the lullaby wasn't coming from the attic. It was coming from the baby monitor on her nightstand. She hadn't touched the monitor in over 2 years, had buried it in a box of Sam's things after the funeral. And yet, here it was, powered on and crackling with soft static. Emma stood frozen, her eyes wide, her throat dry. Then the music started, slow, haunting, mechanical. The tune she used to hum when putting Sam to sleep. Her legs moved before her brain caught up. She ran to the nursery, which had been repainted and locked up long ago, and swung the door open. The crib was there, so was the mobile. Spinning, and on the floor, next to the rocking chair, was the stuffed giraffe, still damp from the dew of the park. Emma backed out slowly, her heart thudding so hard it hurt. She shut the door and locked it. Hands trembling, she reached for her phone. But the screen was cracked, and written across it, in the Notes app she didn't remember opening, was a single sentence. "Sam is waiting." Emma didn't sleep that night. She sat on the edge of her bed, wrapped in the blanket that still smelled faintly of lavender and fear. The giraffe lay on the floor in front of her, untouched, staring at her with stitched-on eyes that looked too knowing, too patient. By dawn, she made a decision. She took a crowbar from the shed and pried open the attic door. It had always been sealed, not by locks, but by dread. Her ex-husband, Daniel, used to say they'd renovate it, maybe turn it into an office. That was before everything fell apart. After the crash, he moved out. Couldn't take the silence, the reminders, the way Emma would disappear mid-conversation and come back with no memory of what she'd said. He blamed her, even if he never said the words. The attic stairs creaked under her weight. Each step felt like peeling back a layer of skin. She reached the top. It was pitch black, save for the morning light filtering through a narrow vent. Dust hung in the air like ash. Boxes were stacked along the walls, untouched for years. But what drew her attention wasn't the boxes. It was the chalkboard, a small green slate propped up against the far wall. Words scrawled in thick white chalk. "You always forget." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She stumbled back, hand over her mouth. She hadn't been up here in years. Sam had never even seen the attic. So how? Behind her, something clattered. A marble rolled across the wooden floor. She turned sharply. No one, but there were drawings. Childlike sketches pinned to the beams, crayon stick figures, a house with a red door, a woman, presumably her, with no face, and always a little boy. Smiling, she gathered the pages, hands trembling. On the back of one, written in messy crayon, "Don't lie to him again." Emma dropped the papers like they were burning. She fled the attic. Downstairs, she ran hot water, splashed her face, scrubbed her skin raw, but her reflection looked wrong. Not older, not tired, just off. Like the face she was wearing belonged to someone else. She checked the time, 7:14 a.m. And then her phone vibrated. A new voicemail. Unknown number. No transcript. Emma pressed play, heart in her throat. The voice was young, fragile, a little boy. "Mommy, where did you go? You said you'd never leave me again." She dropped the phone. It bounced against the tile and landed face up. Incoming. "Call, Sam." She stared at it, paralyzed. Her lungs refused to fill. Her fingers hovered but wouldn't touch the screen. Then, the ringing stopped, and a new voicemail arrived. This time, it was her voice, whispering. "You buried it. You don't remember. But it remembers you." The screen went black. Emma's legs buckled. She sat on the floor, heart jackhammering in her chest, gasping like she'd run miles. Somewhere deep inside her, something stirred. A memory, a smell, wet leaves, metal, screams. But then it was gone, wiped away like fog on glass. She sat in silence for what felt like hours until she looked up and saw the living room mirror. And in it, standing behind her, was a figure. Small. Still. Smiling. Emma didn't turn around. She couldn't. Her eyes locked on the mirror, but the reflection behind her didn't move. A child's silhouette, maybe 4 feet tall, arms at its sides, head slightly tilted like it was curious or waiting. Then, a blink. The shape vanished. She whirled around. Nothing. The room was empty except for her and the giraffe. Emma pressed her hand to her chest, felt the frantic rhythm of her heartbeat echo in her bones. She stood on unsteady legs, walked to the mirror, stared into her own exhausted face. She reached out, fingertips grazing the glass, half expecting it to feel warm or wet. It didn't, she whispered to herself. This isn't real. But then she noticed the edge of the mirror wasn't flush with the wall. It jutted out slightly. Emma frowned. She reached behind the frame, and her fingers found a gap. Hollow. She gripped the frame and tugged. It resisted. At first, then creaked forward on hidden hinges. Behind the mirror was a narrow opening, and stairs, descending. A basement she didn't know existed. She didn't remember any renovations, didn't remember a second set of stairs. But the opening yawned wide, cool air wafting up like breath from a grave. Part of her screamed to run, to call someone, to lock it all up and pretend none of this was happening. But she was already walking. Down. The steps groaned beneath her. She held her phone flashlight in front, casting long shadows on unfinished walls. The air grew colder the deeper she went. Her skin prickled. Her breath turned visible. At the bottom, she found a door, steel. Unmarked. No knob, just a single handprint painted in red. Emma hesitated, then raised her own hand and pressed it to the mark. A click echoed. The door creaked open. The room beyond was wrong. It was made to look like Sam's nursery. Identical, down to the mobile, the wallpaper, the toy box. But the proportions were off. The ceiling too low. The shadows too long. The crib stood in the center, empty, but rocking. Emma stepped inside. On the far wall, scribbled in black crayon, were the words, "We never left." Her knees buckled. She dropped to the floor, sobbing. Every inch of her screamed that she shouldn't be here, that this room wasn't for her. But then something brushed her foot. She looked down. A shoebox, the lid slightly open. Inside were Polaroids. Dozens. All of Sam. Some smiling, some sleeping. One showed him standing in this very room, holding the giraffe. But Emma didn't remember taking any of them. And in the last photo, Sam wasn't alone. Emma was standing beside him. Only her eyes were completely black. She dropped the photos, scrambled backward and hit something soft. She turned. The giraffe was there, but now it was wet, dripping, with blood. Emma screamed. It wasn't loud, more like a wounded gasp, strangled by the weight pressing against her chest. The giraffe sat upright, perfectly still, blood seeping from its seams like something alive had been sewn into it. She backed against the wall, fists clenched, eyes darting. "I'm not crazy," she whispered. "I'm not." But then a sound answered, soft, breathy, like a giggle echoing through a pipe. A child's laugh, and it was coming from inside the crib. She turned slowly, empty. Yet the mobile was spinning, faster now, like caught in a wind she couldn't feel. The lullaby played again, its tune sharp and warped, the sound of childhood twisted into something almost funereal. Then quiet. Everything stopped. Her ears rang in the silence until a voice whispered directly behind her. "Do you remember now?" Emma whirled. No one. But the photos she'd dropped were gone. The shoebox, too. Only the blood-stained giraffe remained, watching her. She fled the room, running up the stairs 2 at a time, scraping her knees, her palms. When she reached the main floor, the hidden mirror door slammed shut behind her with a metallic clang. She turned to face it. There was no trace of a door at all now, just her own reflection, staring back at her. But she wasn't blinking. Emma stepped away slowly, heart thudding like thunder in her throat. She rushed to the kitchen and grabbed her phone. The time read 4:12 p.m., but she could have sworn it was still morning. 3 missed calls from her therapist. A voicemail. She played it. "Emma, it's Dr. Kaplan. I need you to call me back immediately. I've been reviewing your case notes. There's a record here that doesn't make sense. I need to speak to you in person. Today. Please. This is important." She called back, hands shaking. No answer, so she drove. First time behind the wheel in months. Her grip was white-knuckled. The world outside felt too bright, too sharp, like everything was pulsing on a slightly wrong frequency. She kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a child in the back seat. But the car was empty. She arrived at Dr. Kaplan's office around 5. The receptionist looked confused when she walked in. "Emma Langley?" the woman asked, checking the schedule. "I'm sorry, but Dr. Kaplan isn't seeing patients anymore." Emma blinked. "What?" "But he called me, just an hour ago." The woman frowned. "Ma'am, Dr. Kaplan had a stroke 2 nights ago. He's in a medically induced coma." Emma's stomach dropped. That didn't make sense. "I got a voicemail," she said, scrolling to play it. But the voicemail was gone. So were the call logs. Only one contact remained in her phone. Sam. She stumbled out of the office, hands trembling, head pounding. The world blurred around the edges. She sat in her car, gasping. Then the radio turned on. She hadn't touched it. Static. Then music. The lullaby. Her hands moved on their own. Not to turn it off. To drive. Somewhere deep inside she knew where she was going. Somewhere she'd been before, but had no memory of ever reaching. Emma didn't recognize the road, but her hands seemed to. They turned corners before she could think, slowed at intersections she didn't consciously see. The world around her grew sparser. Fewer houses, more trees, the sun bleeding down into the horizon like a wound closing slowly. By the time she pulled up to the house, the sky was the color of rust. It was small, old, peeling white paint, shutters, barely hanging on, the kind of house you drive past without ever really seeing. A mailbox leaned at the end of the driveway, split and unreadable. Emma had never been here before, and yet she had. Every step toward the front door was like wading through a dream, or a nightmare wearing a dream skin. Her breath clouded in the cool air. The wind stirred something that wasn't quite leaves. The door creaked open when she touched it. Inside, it smelled like mold and old paper. Dust floated in sunbeams. The furniture was covered in sheets. But there, in the center of the living room, was something very much uncovered. A child's wooden table. Tiny chairs, finger paint smeared on the surface, long dried. One red handprint in the middle, the same size as Sam's. Emma's knees buckled. She grabbed the wall to steady herself. Her pulse roared in her ears. She didn't know this place, but her body remembered. She wandered through the hall, touching the walls like they might speak to her. And then she stopped at a door, half open. Inside was a child's bedroom. The wallpaper was faded zoo animals. The bed was unmade, toys scattered, a lamp still on, and the smell. Sweet, sickly, rotting. Emma covered her nose, stepped closer. Her eyes scanned the floor, and froze. A small pair of shoes, tipped over, laced with dry blood. She backed away, bumping into a dresser. A notebook fell from the top. She caught it without thinking. It was Sam's. Inside were pages of messy scribbles, some pictures, some words, the kind children write when they've just learned how. But the last few pages were different. They weren't in Sam's handwriting. They were in hers, written again and again. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. And one final entry, shakier, almost illegible. He wouldn't stop crying. I just needed silence. Emma dropped the notebook like it burned her. Her mouth went dry. Her vision swam. No, she whispered. No, no, no! But the room seemed to close around her, breathing, groaning. The shadows shifted. She ran, down the hallway, into the kitchen, and froze again. There was a man sitting at the table, mid-40s, pale, hollow eyes, drinking black coffee from a cracked mug. Daniel, her ex-husband, only he'd been dead for a year. Suicide. Emma, he said calmly. It's time. She staggered back. You're not real. He smiled, a sad, broken thing. Neither are your memories. And then she heard it. From the walls, from the air, a child's voice, close. Mommy? The voice unraveled her. Emma turned slowly, hands trembling, eyes wide. The kitchen warped, its corners stretching like wet paper. Daniel was gone, the table empty, but the voice still lingered, soft and full of quiet ache. Mommy, I'm cold. She staggered forward, through a back door she hadn't noticed before. It opened into a yard overrun with weeds. Broken toys half buried in the soil. A swing moved slowly in the breeze. There was a rusted shed in the corner, its door slightly ajar. She didn't want to go inside, but her legs moved anyway. The shed was dim, smelled of rust and mildew. A child's mattress lay in the center, stained, frayed at the corners. Blankets crumpled in the corner. A small nightlight, shaped like a moon, still plugged in. Its dull blue glow flickered. Emma sank to her knees, because she remembered this was the place where she had taken Sam. It wasn't supposed to be long, just a few days, just until Daniel cooled off. He'd threatened custody, said she was unstable. Emma had panicked. She didn't want to lose her son, so she came here, to this forgotten house she'd inherited from a great aunt. Off the grid, no neighbors, no questions. She'd hidden Sam here. But then the blackout started, and one day she forgot. She forgot she ever brought him, forgot he was even alive. She'd gone back home, convinced herself he'd died in the crash, built a whole life on that belief. The funeral, the grief, the therapy, all based on a memory that never happened. And in this shed, a little boy had waited, for days, then weeks, alone. Until Emma let out a strangled sob. Her body folded over itself, shaking with a grief too large to hold. No. Oh God, Sam. The voice came again, closer this time. I waited for you. She turned. He stood in the doorway, Small, pale, wearing the same clothes from the last day she remembered, holding the giraffe. But his face, it wasn't right. Too still, too perfect. Eyes like glass, deep and endless. Not quite human, but still him, still Sam. Emma reached out, crawling toward him. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know." "You forgot me," he said. "You made me go quiet." Tears streamed down her face. "I thought you were dead. I thought—" He tilted his head like in the mirror. "You needed silence," he repeated, her own words, her journal. A memory came back like a blade to the chest. Sam crying in the shed, his tiny voice hoarse, her hands on his shoulders, rougher than they should have been. Her scream, "Please, just shut up." Then, silence. True silence. Forever. Emma collapsed to the ground, hands clawing at the dirt. Her scream was soundless, swallowed by the night. When she looked up again, Sam was gone, but the giraffe lay at her feet, still damp, still red. The lullaby started again, far away. And Emma remembered everything. Emma didn't leave the shed. She couldn't. Her body refused to move, as if the earth beneath her recognized what she had done and held her there in quiet judgment. She sat curled on the rotting mattress, the giraffe pressed to her chest like a talisman, or a curse. The lullaby still played, faint and sour, threading itself through the trees outside. The sky turned darker. The wind rose, and then, headlights. Car pulling up the dirt road. Emma blinked. Time felt irrelevant now. The only constant was the weight of the truth pressing down on her like a second skeleton. A door slammed. Footsteps. Then a knock on the shed door. She didn't answer. It creaked. Open anyway. Detective Claire Hensley stepped inside, flashlight sweeping the corners. She looked around, took in the mattress, the state of the room, and finally, Emma. "Emma Langley?" she asked, voice low, cautious. Emma looked up, hollow-eyed. "I killed my son," she whispered. Claire crouched beside her, not touching, just listening. I thought he died in a car crash, but it wasn't real. None of it. I made it up. I left him here, and then I forgot." Emma's voice cracked. "I forgot my own child." Claire didn't speak at first. Then she said, "We've been tracking anonymous tips for weeks. Someone kept calling, reporting the cries of a child from this property. But every time we came, it was empty." Emma's breath hitched. He was still trying to be found. Claire looked down at the giraffe. "That toy's been in our evidence locker for 2 years. It disappeared. We thought it was stolen." Emma shook her head slowly. "He brought it back. He always brings it back." Claire studied her. "Emma, there's something you need to know." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small clear evidence bag. Inside was a page. Torn, crumpled, childlike handwriting. Emma recognized it instantly. "She comes and goes. Sometimes she's mommy, sometimes she's not." Claire continued, voice calm but tight. "Your medical records were sealed after the accident, but we had them reopened. Dissociative identity disorder, a rare form triggered by extreme trauma. You weren't just forgetting, Emma. You were becoming someone else." Emma stared at the paper, the words crawling across her skin. Claire kept going. "There were 2 of you, the one who loved Sam and the one who locked him away. You didn't just forget. You buried her. You created the crash, created the grief, built a whole life to hide the truth." A sound escaped Emma's lips, not a scream, not a cry. A long, low moan of realization. Claire's voice softened. "But now you remember. That means she's gone." Emma stood on unsteady legs. She walked out of the shed. Claire followed in silence. The yard was still. The swing had stopped. The toys lay quiet. At the edge of the woods, Emma saw him. Sam, smiling, whole, lit. From within like a lantern. Then he stepped back into the trees and vanished. A peace fell over her like snow. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. She turned to Claire. "Take me in," she said. "I need to tell everything." Claire nodded, and as the two women walked toward the car, Emma finally let go of the giraffe. It fell onto the grass, still wet, still red, but now at rest.